Israel has conducted hundreds of airstrikes in Syria since the fall of Bashar al-Assad, taking out most of Syria's navy, air defences, and airfields. Meanwhile, Israeli ground troops have expanded their invasion of the Golan Heights, pushing deeper into Syria towards Damascus. Joining me now from the Golan Heights is a Syrian human rights activist, Dr Nizar Ayoub, who has spent decades living under Israeli occupation. Thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Nizar, at Declassified, we try to speak to people whose voices and perspectives might not otherwise be heard in the mainstream media. And I've seen very little reporting actually from the Golan Heights over this last week or so. I was wondering if you could tell us what you've seen from there in terms of what the Israeli military has actually been doing and how much further into Syria they have advanced.
Yeah, the Israelis themselves, they don't hide that, the invasion. And we personally had a chance to see after the collapse of the regime of Bashar Assad, dozens of Israeli tanks and bulldozers who were entering, who they opened the gate where is the fence very close to Majd al-Shams, and these tanks invaded. After 1 or 2 days, we heard that they are very close to Damascus, and they already based in 9 different locations along the ceasefire line, which is about 80 kilometers length from the Mount of Hermon to the north, the south, the borders with Jordan. Moreover, the first thing they did, they occupied the highest top in the Mount of Hermon, where the UN forces, observatory forces, located there, and became very close to Damascus. I think, according to them, 20 kilometers far from Damascus, and they established a security zone in order, allegedly, to protect the Israeli illegal settlements in the occupied Golan from possible attacks of terrorists.
It does seem like a bit of a win-win situation for Netanyahu because he's justifying these attacks on Syria by saying that the rebels who took Damascus are terrorists. At the same time, he's also taking credit for the fall of Assad.
This collapse is a direct result of our forceful action against Hezbollah and Iran, Assad's main supporters. It set off a chain reaction of all those who want to free themselves from this tyranny and its suppression. But it also means we have to take action against possible threats.
I think this is an excuse. Many people were expecting that Netanyahu will justify his military fail in Gaza and southern Lebanon, basically in Gaza, regardless the huge massacres and mass of killings which is still going on there, and the huge destruction of the Gaza Strip. So his military failure and his inability to reach all the goals, and even the main goals that he put for the Israeli government. So he took an advantage from the Assad fall to strike here in Syria and to bring destructions in Syria in order to justify his fail there, or in order to keep the Israeli community, like so to bring them for the to make them concentrate on the situation in Syria and what kind of goals he achieved in Syria. So I think he is running forward, instead of stopping the war, the retaliatory war, I can say, on Gaza and its Palestinian civilian population. He's running forward to open another front and to make Israeli community concentrate on these, events rather than on the ceasefire line in Gaza, and to bring back the prisoners in Gaza.
I mean, it does seem like he is constantly looking for enemies to rally the Israeli public against, and that he needs this almost constant state of war. There's obviously this corruption trial that's now starting in Israel, and people have long said that that's, he's very worried about being done for corruption, and as long as he can stay in power and distract people both at home and abroad, then that serves his personal interests. But I just wanted to ask you about something particular that Netanyahu has said about the group who have taken power in Damascus. The US government has a $10 million bounty on the leader of this group, Abu Mohammed al-Jilani, and the group Hayat Tahrir al-Sham is banned both in the US and the UK as a terrorist organization. In UK law, it's actually listed as an alternative name for al-Qaeda. The group's leader has quite an interesting biography, in the sense that his family actually comes from the Golan Heights, right, originally. He himself was born in Saudi Arabia, but his family were displaced from the Golan Heights. He says that the second Intifada in Palestine kind of radicalized him in some senses. In what way is this kind of just like a blowback from Western and Israeli policy?
The UK and the US, the first two countries who declared that they looking for ways how to lift al-Julani and his terrorist organization from the terrorist lists. And here is the fear of the Syrian people from the regional and superpowers interference in Syria itself. Now it's up. The fall of Bashar, the collapse and the fall of Bashar Assad, it's a good step. But now the more complicated steps is, very challenging to the Syrian community and to the military fractions. So the main question now, if the al-Julani and other factions are interested in building democratic Syria and safeguard the Syrian people and, bring for social justice there and the rule of law, I think most of the people are very skeptic on that. And I don't think that at this stage the Syrian people can influence the peace process or the political process now in Syria, because seemingly al-Julani and his faction are controlling everything, including, and they are making all the decisions. But I think there is two, ways: either to Syria becomes a country where we see a chaos, or to build a democratic state based on the rule of law and human rights. The main fear that Syria will, that we will see chaos or another dictatorship. The Syrian people are very scared about this possible situation. But we can't judge now, but there is a big fear.
In 2019, Trump recognized Israel's illegal annexation of the Golan Heights, which no other country had done. The UK still regards it as an illegal occupation under international law. However, an article that my colleague wrote recently at Declassified, and which you kindly commented on, exposed how the British Army was sending officers from a military academy to go on tours in the Golan Heights. They even wanted to go wine tasting at a vineyard in the Golan Heights, but that was cancelled due to the pandemic. And it seems like the UK, whilst it says this occupation is illegal under international law, in practice it does very little to actually punish Israel for that. Do you think that Israel's able to do what it can do now and move so effortlessly further into Syria? Because for decades there's been very little pushback from the West over their occupation of the Golan Heights.
The Israeli behavior always contradicts international law. And the international community doesn't, push Israel to respect international law and the relevant international resolution and eventually put an end for this occupation. And the international community should not support Israel in keeping its occupation over these countries. But many countries, they're doing the opposite. Sometimes they help, sometimes they support.
And these are all violations which your organization, al-Assad, has been documenting for many years. There are excellent reports on your website where people can read more in detail about the history of this occupation. I think you call it a forgotten occupation.
Yes, yes, there is a book that we, in 50 years of occupation, we published a very huge book about Israeli policies. And in our website, there is a very interesting map and statistics. Mainly, we took from Israeli of resources and Israeli archive. So it's not a secret. When Israel occupied the Golan, they evicted about 95% of its indigenous Syrian population. At that time, about 130,000 civilians. Eventually, later on, after the close of the general military operations, they destroyed their villages and small farms, which is amount to 345 villages and small farms. The IDBs inside Syria, according to the UN facts, they reached about 500,000. At that time, only 5 Arab villages remained in the Golan, located on the northern Golan in the Mount of Hermon, and like the population of these 5 villages right now about 28,000 people. And while they built or erect on the ruins of the destroyed villages and farms 35 illegal Israeli settlements.
It's something that people don't know enough about. And when we talk about Israel's occupation of Gaza and the West Bank, the Golan Heights is often forgotten. So it's really good to talk to you and learn more about that today, particularly as Israel seems to be in the process of enlarging that occupation as we speak. Thanks for joining us. If people are watching this video and they haven't already subscribed to our YouTube channel, please click the button below. You can also support our work through the Super Thanks button. And we have a PayPal fundraiser for our investigations next year. I'll put the link in the video description below. Thanks for watching, and thanks again for joining me today, Nizar.